Well, good morning, Christina, and it's so nice to have you here. I'm sorry I've been pestering you for so long to get this interview. But would you help me out and tell the viewers about your name and your company and tell us a little bit of backstory on you?
Sure. So my name is Christina Reddick, and the company is Dominative Development. A little bit of backstory, I guess maybe 3 years. I was in a PhD program. Well, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
So about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with PTSD.
Yep.
And it significantly changed my life. I went from being this high-functioning individual that was working on a PhD, thinking I would one day be a university president, all those things, to crying constantly and not being able to get out of bed, basically.
Completely debilitating.
Completely. So there was some dark times and some great times. The number one thing and the hardest thing that I learned before I was diagnosed and before it happened, I had disassociated most of my young adult life. So I was in a disassociative state, which caused a lot of manic times. I don't have bipolar, but caused a lot of manic. So it caused me to accomplish a lot of the things I accomplished along the way. I think it helped me be a great mom. I have one son who's now 19. And I think it helped my career and helped my growth. But it was at a cost.
Yeah.
And it was a great cost. At the time and still, I work for higher education, a state institution. So I had our government benefits, pretty much the only one that's left is the FMLA and things like that. And I had always been in the mindset of a worrywart, so I had disability insurance. Found out the short term doesn't cover mental illness, the long term does, and all the challenges that come with our healthcare system. And I was out for 5 months. The revelation was I was never, I just went to therapy going, can I just hit the reset button and go back to how I was before? And finally, it sunk in that wasn't going to happen. Before that, I had a conversation. So things were starting to fall apart slowly before I got diagnosed. And I had a conversation with a colleague in my PhD program. We're both in Gonzaga University's study for leadership studies program. She's Native American from northern Minnesota. Couldn't be as far apart in demographics and everything, and as close as values. I mean, she's probably the closest in values to myself that I've ever met in another human being. And it was something, magical, whatever you call it, the universe, something put us together. And we had a conversation, and I said, hey, I've got great women in my network. I don't need to keep doing what I'm doing and feeling bad about myself all the time and feeling like I'm never getting ahead. And, I can create something. And we had this kind of conversation. She was in.
Yep.
So we co-founded the company with the idea that we wouldn't take a paycheck for like 5 years.
Been there, done that.
And we're on year 3, so I haven't gotten paid.
No.
But
I didn't know you were going to run a nonprofit.
Right. So, but we've done some things that are so impactful and so transformative.
And that's why I wanted to interview you, what you just said.
Right. So we've been able to produce events, endurance sports events. We've been able to push the needle in our events and get an inclusive experience happening. We've been able to introduce endurance and multi-sport events to a tribe in northern Minnesota that when my son met my co-founder, my business partner, he said, I learned in school her tribe was wiped out.
Wow.
So that's how far removed a lot of these tribes are from American culture and society. I learned her research on indigenous business practices was exactly the type of foundation I wanted for
the process.
Yeah. It's about spirituality, community, sustainability, and entrepreneurship.
It's about giving, not just taking.
Exactly. And when we all give to each other, we all support each other and we all elevate each other. Mm-hmm. And that's the same experience I had, which I do have to give credit to, the 9-to-5 that paved my way. That was my introduction to triathlon.
Yep.
So it was a transformative experience for me. Mm-hmm. Being introduced into that sport, being introduced to a lot of the crusaders in the sport, being part of the women's movement in the sport, and all of the controversy that comes with that, being introduced to transgender athletes and the controversy among transgender athletes, and then being introduced with all these people I just don't understand.
That you had to learn.
Yeah. And so it's like sometimes I'll speak on someone about my own feminist point of views, which drastically don't match a lot of my PhD colleagues' scholarly feminist point of views. But people say, did you learn all this from triathlon? And I'm like, yes, I learned all this from triathlon. Because for me, triathlon is a metaphor for life.
Okay. Expand on that for me.
You're never running one sport in life. You're not running a marathon. You're not in a cycling event. You can say I'm a husband or I'm a mother. A lot of people say like I'm a stay-at-home mom. And when you talk to stay-at-home moms, they're involved in so many things. Or they're stopping. So they've decided to be on the sidelines and be the coach. And so you transition through life. So you start out running track, then you transition to swimming, then you transition to coaching, then you transition to volunteering, then you transition to trying to be an Olympic sprinter after being out of the game athletically for so long. And that's what I go through when I do a race. And the funny thing is I go through the same process my athletes and competitors do when I'm producing events. Because as a person producing these events, I'm transitioning my mindset and my focus from the swim to the bike to the run.
You're thinking about the next event.
And next week, and all that comes with it, all the challenges that come with it, all the successes, all the amazement that comes with it. So logically, the next conversation that happened was, how do we take this to the masses? That we want to bring this experience to everyone.
We wanted everybody to experience what you've experienced.
Exactly. The key entrepreneurship goal, right?
Educate the masses.
I want everyone to be on board. I want everyone to take an Uber ride. I want everyone to stay in an Airbnb. I want them all to have that experience, It's your big why. It's every entrepreneur's big why. And so part of my big why has become doing this with PTSD, doing this and having the challenge of a mental illness. And I will say this is the first time publicly or in any format or forum I've said I was diagnosed with PTSD.
Well, if you would allow me to just take a sidebar here for a second. It's amazing that you bring this up because, I've told you a little bit about past year, couple years of my life. And it's unlike PTSD, I've ended up with some sort of agoraphobia. I'll let people get close, but only so close, and then I get angsty. Evolution process for me was when I got sick a year and a half ago, the doctor said stop drinking. And the doctor sent me to Colorado, and I was introduced to legal marijuana.
Oh, wow.
And that's the first time I've ever said that.
Kudos so there you go. We're getting very vulnerable here. I love it.
We're bearing our souls. So that's in a small part why I spend a lot of time here in South Florida, because I have a legal marijuana card. I didn't realize what PTSD was. I didn't realize what anxiety was. I didn't realize any of that stuff. And so one of the big interviews that I really want to do is that I really want to bring some healthcare professionals in here and talk about mental health in the C-suite.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically for entrepreneurs.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's what I see here is, and I'll let you have the mic back in a second, but I see a chicken and the egg scenario happening.
Mm-hmm.
We had an interview here earlier this morning. A guy was in here talking about singularity, which is a concept of computers basically leap jumping over humans in the food chain. I said, when that's going to happen? He says, 2029.
Wow.
Goes back to the Oxford University white paper 3-4 weeks ago, said, yeah, by 2030, 2035, we're looking at probably 45%, 50% of the workforce being displaced. Mm-hmm. We're going to force a lot of people into some uncomfortable situations.
Right.
We're going to force a lot of people into being entrepreneurs. And in order to go it alone, go outside the village walls and make your own camp, everybody's going to think you're crazy. Mm-hmm. Just go get another job. Just get that resume up,
Right.
So back to you. I genuinely appreciate you being honest with this. Now tell me how that anxiety, you said it's made you, I think you said it has made you better. I will say in my case, yes. The anxiety made me better until I realized that it wasn't anymore.
Right.
When I realized that the anxiety was becoming a demon.
Mm-hmm.
So back to you a little bit. Expand on that for me.
So there was a couple things that happened that manifested me really breaking down and having to go on full disability. Two things happened similarly at the same time. I started having fibroids and cysts and all the pain in my lower abdomen that's associated with that. I had remembered a lot of my youth because, well, first of all, I grew up in Miami to a criminal father in the 80s.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, we're talking Miami Vice.
Yeah. Except most of the time he wasn't rich. So
a little statistic that people don't know about criminals.
Most of them aren't rich.
Most of them are broke.
Yeah, so when I say that, everyone thinks I have this luxury, hot rod lifestyle. No, we spend a lot of time collecting cans or hanging out at the boss's house for work.
Yep.
So that was from age birth to 10. I spent a year in shelters and foster homes. My mom left before I was 1. Signed over all rights to my dad, which was unheard of in the 80s. And then I was deposed to be a federal witness from 10 to 11. And
good Lord, that's got to be mind-boggling.
well, the funny thing is I learned about all the illegal things we were doing when I was being deposed.
You didn't even realize.
I didn't know cockfighting was illegal. I didn't know betting was illegal. I didn't know. I mean, I kind of knew writing bad checks was wrong. I knew stealing, putting meat down your pants so you could eat was kind of wrong. But I grew up in this gray world where I'm taught everyone's a criminal. Just some of us are honest about it and some of us aren't. And so
kind of skews your whole balance.
It skews the balance, and it makes you trust the wrong people. You either come out of that not trusting anyone, or you come out of it not trusting the right type of people.
I grew up in the thoroughbred racehorse business, trust me.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what I've gone through in the past couple of years is what you're talking about is you kind of step back and you go, you know what? There's such a thing as bad, good people.
Right.
Think about that for a second.
And yeah.
People that would give you the shirt off their back, but you would never, ever want to be seen in public with.
No, or let them know your social security number.
That's right.
So he was, and I learned this through depositions, he was heavily into identity theft before identity theft was a major cool crime.
Right.
And so then I pieced things together during my teenage years. Oh, we went to visit this guy and pick up this paperwork because it was fake birth certificates.
You're connecting the dots.
Yeah. And, I had this cold disassociated recollection of a lot of the things I went through the legal deposition process.
Yeah.
My mom, they tried to get my mom to turn states or federal evidence. Basically, we would go into the federal witness protection program. She said, I'm not a snitch. I'm not telling you. She, to this day, says she did the right thing by, But I thought she was going to take the check and run and start this new life with me. And when that didn't happen, I think at that time, I realized I had to be self-reliant.
Damn right.
Because this person that had told me all these years, if I ever say what we did, I was going to be put in jail alongside with them at a juvenile level, figured out he was just lying. He was like selling me a pack of lies to let me...
That's just a narcissist.
Right. And I was the perfect lookout.
Sure.
I didn't realize this.
Yeah.
You know how many...
You were innocent and sweet.
You know how many times my dad was just driving his little daughter home to a hot meal?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And then when my mom didn't, for whatever reason and whatever she's going through and still going through, we still have a relationship today. My take was that she chose these bad guys over me. And I still feel that today. So I felt very early on, okay, I can only rely on myself.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do everything.
Absolutely.
In the beginning. And the beginning, unlike what I thought, is not a year. The beginning is 5 years at least.
Yeah.
And that's if you're successful.
That's if you're successful.
And that's if your timing is right. So you can have a great idea, but if you are even 3 years too early, that means it's going to take about 8 to 10 years or 8 to 11 years because you had that genius idea 3 years before the technology was sound or before the market and was ready. And there are so many companies that I get that email that are combining the endurance, the sporting, the training, and the tech space.
Yeah.
I just got one the other day saying, we know this is scientifically proven. We know this is great. It's been a great ride, but sorry guys, we got to close up shop because just the technology of like oxygen intake and training output, we don't have the resources to educate the market. And I know it's phenomenal what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, they're just too early.
Yeah.
They're really just too early.
Yeah.
And I think, well, going back to the origin story, I guess, I realized once I started having these physical pains that I had remembered the actions and the memories, but my mind had disassociated any physical pain associated to it. And anything that happened that was too painful for my mind to disassociate shut it out. So I had this going on. I had fibroid surgery. I came back to work one week and I had this horrific flashback of watching someone being shot and myself being stabbed at Oleta River State Park. And I was so disappointed in my mind for allowing me to work across from Oleta River State Park and swim in that water for 15 odd years, for go to school there as my undergraduate and for 15 odd years, and to essentially lie to me all these years that this was a safe place for me to be. Yeah. And I had to get serious help right away. Yeah. And so I went to see a psychiatrist, I went to see a psychologist, got on tons of drugs, like found out at that point how bad I was. And I will say, I don't know the solution, but if I didn't have like the insurance or the availability of that care at that time, I wouldn't have like made it.
I know.
And I know there's lots of entrepreneurs that are not taking the leap, or pre-entrepreneurs or whatever you call them, they're not taking the leap because of the issue of health insurance or the issue and access and ability and just juggling all that. Yeah. And at the same time, at that point, I said to myself, as part of the healing process, is I need to have control over certain parts of my life.
Yep.
And even if I can't leave this job right away.
Because if the wheels fall off, you have to be able to go to a safe spot.
Right.
And you don't have time to call a boss and say, can I have the afternoon off?
Exactly.
Because he doesn't understand that your mind right now is complete cabbage.
No. And even with FMLA, I'm going through so much with my job right now because it's like in question, like in this in flux and, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm lucky that there is FMLA, and it's a federal guideline, and like my psychiatrist and my psychologist, and there were other women's issues that were happening at the same time, which fed into it. So when I started to get a little bit better, there was another issue that emerged that required surgery right away, that brought pain, that brought flashback, like immobilizing flashbacks. Like I literally would wake up and think that the people that had tried to kidnap me when I was in a shelter were like I was needing to hide from them. Yeah. I had no concept of reality whatsoever. There were times I became a danger, not just to myself, but to my family, to my son. And my whole adult life of raising him had been to facilitate a life in such a way that would protect him from anything like that. Yep. And I became like this. You became the problem. I became the problem. True. So whether my mind knew I had this FMLA and I had this protective time, and my mind said, this is bullshit, we're not going to keep this from ourselves anymore. We're going to let you know everything that happened in this space that you've chosen to come to and make a part of your identity, you know, like LinkedIn thing and the Facebook thing said like, I am this here and I am that. And I've taken all that off. I'm trying to give to the world. And I've been able, yes, to help students develop and grow. And that's been the way that I've given for a long time. But there's so much more. And what's become now a big part of the foundation of our company is the self-care and the mental wellness. I saw that from your pitch when I was at that pitch night. Right. I absolutely saw that. And it's funny, we've actually started to integrate it into processes, like business processes. The marketing person would be challenged and ask me a question. And what we would try to do something, run a campaign, didn't feel right, but we pushed it. Even though it didn't feel right, we still pushed it. Didn't have a great outcome. You know, we pushed it out of fear, out of scarcity, we got to bump these numbers. So we'll give away this and we'll get 1,000 leads, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't work. She's messaged me, what do I do now? And I said, you know what? I'm going to meditate and I'm going to think about it. I'm going to reflect and we'll discuss it. And that's our process. Yeah. That's our process. And when things are starting to feel pushed, we back off and we meditate and reflect. That's that anxiety. The push is the anxiety. Yeah. It's that sense of urgency that's really not there. Exactly. It's only here. What is it there's a passage in Think and Grow Rich that says, there is no hurry on the creative plane. There is only abundance there for you. Yep. And it's taken me going through this journey of PTSD, of having to rebuild my psyche, of... That self-concept. Yeah. It's like understanding that being fearful is part of your human existence and your human mind. It's a function of it. Yep. And give it space. Yep. That's what it needs. Yep. And the same creative process and plane that helps you get through these dark psychological times for me is the same creative plane where the idea for the app came from. Where are you on the app? So we are currently negotiating with 2 technology officers. We've turned the tables. We've said, you know what? We have 2 co-founders and a marketing manager that basically funded her own salary. She's the only one getting paid because she brought in the funds. And we said the next person that comes on board is going to be a technology officer. Gotta bring the money. Gotta bring the money. Gotta bring the money for you to do it. Like, you know, like whether you want to put money in the pot and pay yourself from it because of whatever you're going through, or whether you want to put money in the pot and that equals an equity state, that's fine. But the next person has to be as vested as we are in this, all in. And we have two people we're talking with that either one was someone connected through the Founders Institute, another one just I can't say the word. Serendipitous.
Yeah, serendipitous.
Came through an entrepreneurship group focused on women. I know both have the skill set and knowledge, but we'll see if the timing is right for them.
Absolutely. And don't force it.
No, and that's what I've had to learn.
Yeah. We're not forcing it. Our event production side is growing good, so we're steady on our events. But we know that app is the thing that connects all the dots, and
it turns it into a vehicle.
Exactly. And whether you do the virtual experience or in person, on-site experience, there's a transformative aspect that's built in. And that's what's powerful to us.
I would like to, in one last thing, leave with you about the whole rebuilding of the self-concept. Not that I want to steal the show at all, but I will tell you that one of the things that I'm the most proud of about where I am today is the fact that the hell that I just went through, if it would have been a 25-year-old Gary, I would have been in a bottle. And this mature 50-year-old Gary went through this sober. And dealing with PTSD and anxiety when you're sober is brutal.
Yeah.
Because you get to feel it all.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing to take the edge off.
Right.
But I'm proud. And I think you should be damn proud of where you're at, too.
Thank you. And I am so thankful that you are giving and you are creating this forum, because I will say I have not met another individual through this entrepreneurship journey that I felt as safe just getting real with about it. And I think what you have here is something powerful.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, because the 21st century is going to be the century of the entrepreneur.
Right.
And it's not so much even about entrepreneurs. It's just about helping people make the transition in life.
Right.
It's scary.
It's very scary.
But it all works out.
Yeah.
A few nights driving Uber. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
Very well.